Good morning. Welcome to JFall 2022. My session today, Automate Your Home by Building Your Own Zigbee Bridge, is a story based on my own personal experience in home automation and what I've learned over the past few years. I will also take you through along on a journey where I automate the lights in my home office. So like every good story starts, once upon a time, just a little less than 4 years ago, a colleague of mine told me about Phillips and what you can do with Phillips. And I was fascinated, so I bought myself a Phillips Hue starter pack. And when I got it, it included a bridge, Phillips Hue lamps, and a dimmer switch. So I went to my living room. I replaced the light bulbs in my living room with the Phillips Hue light bulbs. I took the bridge, placed it by my router. I plugged in the power adapter, plugged in the network cable, and connected it to my home router. Then I downloaded the mobile app, Phillips Hue app. On my phone, I set up the bridge, the light bulbs, and I linked the dimmer switch to my light bulbs. This was all nice, because now I could actually control the lights in my living room from anywhere in the house. I wasn't limited to where the light switch was. I could place the dimmer switch anywhere where I wanted to. So this was good. And I thought, let me upgrade it. And I bought myself some Google Home Minis. And these I placed strategically around the house so that I could control my lights from anywhere using Google. So I downloaded the Google Home app. And I linked the Philips Hue app onto my Google Home account. Then a friend of mine told me about the Lidl multi-adapter and how he could control it from his phone. And I decided I also need it. I can use it somewhere. So I got the Lidl multi-adapter, took it to my home office, and I placed my laptop charger and my screens into the multi-adapter. This was COVID time, so I needed a way to turn off the electricity remotely after I was done working. I soon realized that I couldn't use this through my phone because I didn't have a bridge, so I had to press a button. But then I went and I bought myself the bridge from Lidl. I went and placed it close to my router, plugged in the power adapter, plugged in the network cable, and plugged it back into my router. And this was really good. I started placing all the light bulbs in my house with Philips Hue light bulbs, and pretty soon my whole house had Philips Hue light bulbs, and I could control my whole house, all the lights in my house through my mobile phone or through Google. When I go to sleep at night, I would say, "Hey Google, turn off everything. My laptop is turned off and my light bulbs are turned off." And I really felt like I had a lot of power in my hand. I started thinking, what else can I automate? What other smart devices can I get? And researching, I found an Ikea air purifier. And this device, it looks like a coffee table, and it acts like a coffee table as well. And I placed this in my living room next to my couch. And while I can use it as a coffee table, it also actually purified the air in my living room. And I got myself some adapters, which I used on the lamps in my house. So I plugged the lamps in, and I could make these lamps smart lamps. And with this, I also got some light switches, so that I can control the lamps from the light switches. But I soon realized I needed another bridge to make this all work from the phone. So I got a bridge from Ikea, took it home, placed it by my router, plugged in the power adapter, plugged in the network cable, and linked it to the last LAN port on my router. Then I downloaded the mobile app, linked it to Google Home, and I was able to use this. Then we moved to a new house, to a bigger house. And there was a lot of downlighting, and I soon realized that I did not have enough Philips Hue light bulbs to replace all the lights in my house. So I did not want to spend more money on Philips Hue light bulbs, so I had to come up with another idea. And I started researching, and I found Fubaru dimmer too. This is a little device that you install into your wall. You take out the light switch, plug in the power, plug in the light, connect the light switch to the dimmer. The light switch acts as a normal light switch, but you can control this from your phone. I also saw that they had nice little dimmers, which my wife found really nice, with little lights on it, that I could also just take out the existing light switch and plug this one in. But I realized I needed another bridge. I didn't have space anymore for another bridge. All of my LAN ports were taken on the router. I didn't want to get a TP link. And all of the plugs was plugged into a multi-adapter, which was plugged into another multi-adapter, and I would have to get another multi-adapter to plug in this one. And I did not want to do that. My house started looking like a mini data center gone wrong. So my wife wasn't happy, and I had to come up with a solution. So I started researching. I wanted to find a way where I was not limited to a specific manufacturer or having to buy the bridge of that manufacturer. And after a lot of research and talking with my friends, I built my own home bridge. And this is the bridge I currently have in my house that runs all of the automation in my house, lights, smoke detectors, anything. Who am I? I'm Andre Groeneveld. I'm a Java chapter lead at ABN AMRO. I've got 15 years of software development experience, and I think of myself as a home automation tinkerer. I like to see what I can automate around the house. If I have to do something more than once, I want to automate it. My surname and my accent might confuse you a bit. That's because I was born in South Africa, and myself, my wife, and my son moved to the Netherlands in 2018. So I want to do a little survey with the audience. So by show of hands, if you could please lift your hand if you do not know what a Raspberry Pi is. So if you do not know what a Raspberry Pi is. Okay, everybody knows. That's good. And can you lift your hands if you do not know what Docker is? Okay, that's fine. So I will not talk about Raspberry Pi and Docker today. I will need a session for each one if I had to talk about that, because they are quite extensive. I will, though, talk about items that I learned about in my own home automation journey. And first of these is MQTT. MQTT is a lightweight publish-subscribe network protocol. What this means is you've got an MQTT service that you install on a laptop or on a server, in our case a Raspberry Pi. It's got a broker that connects to the MQTT server, and then you've got clients that subscribes on certain topics to the MQTT server. The broker will publish messages to MQTT, and MQTT will then distribute these messages to any of the clients registered on that specific topic. A client can also send a message to the MQTT to pass on to the broker. For example, office lamp turn on. MQTT will pass this on to the broker will process the message, and it can then come back with a status to say the office lamp is now status on, and it can send it to all of the clients that is subscribed on the MQTT. If a message is sent that does not have any client subscribed, it will just disregard the message as if it was not sent. So then the message is removed. The next, we've got Zigbee. So Zigbee is a low-powered wireless mesh network specification. And this is a specification that was created and maintained by the Zigbee Alliance, who is now called the Connectivity Standards Alliance for IoT. So they have rebranded themselves as that. And in a Zigbee mesh network, you've got a coordinator. Now this coordinator controls all of the devices in your network. It knows which devices is in your network, it knows how to communicate with them, and it knows the authentication and security protocols to communicate with them. Then you've got end devices. End devices are devices that is battery operated. That's why it's called low powered. So these ones are run on batteries, and they can usually run for quite a few years on the batteries. and they would go into sleep mode when they are not being used. So once, if you want to get them out of sleep mode, you will press a button, otherwise they save power. The connector will then connect to these end devices, the coordinator will connect to these end devices, and it could be that some of your end devices might be too far away from the coordinator. And that is where routers come in. So routers are smart devices that's plugged into actual physical power. So these do need electricity to run, and the coordinator can send messages to them. They do not go to sleep. And these routers can then pass on messages to other end devices or to other routers that's close to it, and they can then pass on messages to other end devices. These routers also actually connect to each other. And if you've got a big home automation system at home with a lot of routers installed, you can end up with a whole big spider web of routers connected to each other. Then I've got Conbee 2, which is a Zigbee USB gateway. So it's a device that looks like a USB stick that you can plug into a laptop, or in our case, plug it into a Raspberry Pi. And this Conbee device communicates with smart devices that is Zigbee enabled. The Conbee 2 is created by a company called Decons, and they do have their own software to run it, but we chose not to use their software, and I will come to why. But the important thing is to know that the Conbee 2 is your communication to your smart devices. And it also forms part of the coordinator that you have in your network mesh, in your Zigbee network mesh. Next is Zigbee to MQTT, which is an application that connects your Zigbee networks to MQTT networks. This is an application that was created and is maintained by a developer that lives in the Netherlands. And this is an application that we install on our Raspberry Pi, where the Conbee 2 USB stick is plugged into. And the Conbee stick will then communicate with the devices. And this together, the Zigbee to MQTT and Conbee 2 is your coordinator for your home Zigbee network. Zigbee to MQTT also acts as a broker that connects to MQTT, and it can send and receive messages from MQTT. So in this case, an example, office lamps turn on, and the broker will use the Conbee 2 device to send the command to the light bulb. Light bulb will then say, hey, I'm on, which the Conbee device will then send back to the broker, and the broker will then publish the message to MQTT. And any client subscribed on that topic will receive the status update. Home Assistant. So this is a central control system for home smart devices. And this is the application that I use to replace my Google Home application with. So this is also software that you install on a laptop or on a PC, in our case a Raspberry Pi, and it subscribes to the Zigbee to MQTT topic on the MQTT service. You can then go on your laptop and go to the website of your Raspberry Pi and access your Home Assistant. And from there you can turn on lights, you can control anything that you want. And you can also download the Home Assistant mobile app on your phone and connect that to your own Home Assistant instance. Note that you have to be inside of the network unless you expose a port on your router, but I will not discuss that today. And then the big picture. So this is how everything fits together. We've got the Zigbee to MQTT and the Conbee device, which is the coordinator. This coordinator communicates with the smart devices, and the Zigbee to MQTT publishes topics on MQTT, and Home Assistant connects there to control your lights. In this setup, I've got Home Assistant and MQTT and Zigbee to MQTT running on the same Raspberry Pi. So Raspberry Pi is strong enough to run all of these applications. and I've got the Conbee 2 plugged into the same Raspberry Pi, and then I've got Home Assistant, MQTT, and the other software all running in Docker containers. The reason why I chose Docker containers is you can set up Home Assistant as a operating system on your Raspberry Pi. So that will be your Raspberry Pi's operating system, but I like to control my Raspberry Pi. I want to have full control of it. And I also want to be able to move my setup onto another platform if I need to in future. So I've got another question for the audience. Those with any type of smart devices at home, can you please put up your hand? Any smart devices? Oh, nice. Okay, so almost all the audience. And from everybody, who knows or has Zigbee devices specific at home? Okay. And how many of you that put your hand up now actually has your own bridge and is not using manufacturer's bridge? Okay. So for my journey that I want to take you on along, I automated the lights in my home office. So what had happened, the previous owner had light bulbs that was connected to power adapters, that was connected to a multi-adapter, that was connected to the wall. And I wanted to be able to control these lights using my phone. So I got myself another Raspberry Pi. I've got a Conbee 2 device. I got a USB extender. I got some smart adapters from Ikea. And I got myself a remote control from Ikea as well. Now the downlights, I had to actually get 3 of these adapters because the downlights, there was too many of them, and the previous owner had plugged them into multiple adapters in the wall. So I had to cater for all 3 of these adapters, which was good. I took my Raspberry Pi, I plugged the Conbee device into the USB extender, and I plugged that into the Raspberry Pi. And the reason I needed this USB extender is that the Conbee device communicates on the 2.4 gigahertz frequency. And it can have interference from other devices that's around it. So for example, your USB 3 port. So it's important to plug the USB extender into your USB 2 port. This also allows you to move the Conbee device around to get a better frequency in your house, and you don't have to move your entire Raspberry Pi around. So it also helps to get a better signal. So then we can start with the scripting. So the hardware is ready, now time for the software. Everything I'm going to talk about is on my GitHub page. I did upload it, and at the end of the slide, I do have a QR code to get to my GitHub page. But first, I will only discuss some of the important setups that I did. For the Docker Compose file, I added in 3 services. I did not have separate Docker Compose files. For MQTT, I used the Eclipse Mosquito server. This is also one that is suggested by the Zigbee to MQTT software, so I used the same one. And I said that the containers should always restart unless I stop it. You don't want to be in an instance where your Raspberry Pi goes down and it goes up again, and then none of your containers are started. So I set it to restart automatically. Then I added in the configuration volumes. I added in the ports. The port 1883 is for the MQTT protocol, and the 9001 is for the WebSockets protocol. Then I used the no auth authentication command. Note that this is fine if you're not going to expose your home network outside of your own network, if you want to expose it on the internet. If you do decide to expose this on the internet because you might want to hook it up to Google Home, then please add authentication. This is for a simple home setup where you do not need external connection. Then for Zigbee to MQTT, I use the Conbee Zigbee to MQTT library, and this is the one officially created by Kun, which is created and maintained by him. And I added the volumes for the configuration. Next, I added the ports and environment variables so that I can have the correct time zone, and I added the device. So it is better to, when adding your device to use the actual path to your device using the serial by ID directory. Then for Home Assistant, I used the GitHub repository, container repository image, and I set this one to also automatically start up. Added some volumes, and then for network mode, I selected host. This allows Home Assistant to use the same network as what the host hardware is using, in our case, Raspberry Pi. You don't need this, but then you would have to set up the ports. For this example, I did it a simple way, so I used the network mode as host. Again, when you want security, there's a better way to set this up. Then the configuration file for Zigbee to MQTT. Over here, there's an option permit join. When this is true, your Zigbee to MQTT will start picking up and registering new devices. When this is false, it will not pick up any new devices. So for now, we set it to true. We set up Home Assistant and the MQTT instance it needs to connect to. And we specify availability true, so we can see whether devices are available and send this notification on. And we set up the serial ports. And because we're using a Conbee 2 USB stick, we need to set the adapter as decons. This is because the Conbee 2 is not officially provided or supported yet by Zigbee to MQTT, but it does support it, and here you just specify the adapter. Then you specify the port, and you set that the network keys should be automatically generated at the first startup. And then it's time to start it up. So now you can start up your home automation system. And you do this by running docker compose up -d. Now before I continue, I want to give one tip, and that is to always have a backup plan. Don't automate something where you don't have a backup plan in case something goes off. Your Raspberry Pi could go down, your network could go down. Always have a plan. So I've got a little video to show you on examples of what could go wrong if you did not have a backup plan. Ooh, I do not seem to have audio here.
No meetings today. Remember, dentist at 9:30.
Fire off.
Fire off.
Open door.
Door open.
And we're gonna do one more.
Oh ja. Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Repeat that.
Open door.
I didn't understand that.
Hey, open door.
Play on the floor.
Get over the door. Open the door.
Wrong
Open the
voice
door.
command. Error.
Hey meneer, goedemiddag. Ja. Open door. Open door. Open door. Fire.
Higher volume.
Fire.
Higher.
Always have a backup plan. So your container should be up now, and you are now able to start setting up smart devices. If you go to your IP address of your Raspberry Pi, I hit my IP address, you go to port 8080, you will get to the Zigbee to MQTT UI. From here, you can start, it will start picking up devices on your network, and the name will show in the beginning as a MAC address. So this, you won't remember this, but luckily there is a way to change the name. So I set up the adapter for the side lights in my office, and I set up 2 adapters for the downlighting. Then I set up the office light switch as well, and I changed the names to make it more memorable for myself. Then I set up groups, so you can link devices together to create one group, so you only have to communicate with, or you only have to set up one group, you don't have to talk to multiple devices. And I set up a group for my downlights, the 2 adapters is now one downlight group, and I set up a group for my office lights, which includes the 2 downlights and the side lights. Next, you open up Home Assistant by going to port 8123 on your Raspberry Pi. And first time that you connect, you will be asked to just create a user account. So you enter a name, username, password, continue. Then once you're in Home Assistant, you can go to the Settings tab, and under Settings there's a Device and Services, and you can see the different devices or the different services that you can connect to, different integrators. And here you can see MQTT that you just set up recently. You can go into it and you can add any devices to your dashboard, so you can control them more quickly. One topic I want to talk about as well is bindings versus automations. So when you connect devices to different devices, so when I connect my adapter to the remote control, there's two ways that you can connect them. So one is by binding the devices, and the other one is by creating automations. So key differences: bindings I will do in Zigbee to MQTT, and automations I will do in the Home Assistant app. With a binding, when your Raspberry Pi goes down, the bindings will still work. So you can still use your remote control to control the light switch. When in the automation, if the Home Assistant goes down, your automations do not work anymore. With bindings, you can bind buttons to a controller, but with automations, you've got a lot more power. So they both do have pros and cons. With an automation, you can, for example, set up that if you have a remote control and you turn the on button, your bedroom lights go on, the kitchen lights goes off, your TV goes on, and you can create all types of automations for around your house. You can also create automations for when you go on holidays, so that you can set up to make it look like somebody is at home while there's actually nobody at home. So for the bindings in Zigbee to MQTT, I went and I selected the light switch and the office lights, and I bound them together on the on and off button. And then in Home Assistant, I went and I created an automation. Now, before you create an automation, I went to go look for a blueprint. The blueprint is a file that has the configuration set for you, and you can just select what should happen on each button press. So this makes the automation a lot simpler for you. And if you go to the community website for Home Assistant, you'll find hundreds of automations that the community has created. There's a big community pool working on and helping to maintain Home Assistant. So I looked for the Ikea remote control blueprint. I imported it into my Home Assistant. I went and I created a helper, which is just a variable that contains the last button that was pressed. And then I set up my own automation script. And what I selected was, when I press the left dimmer switch, my side lights will go on because it was on my left. And when I press right, my down lights will go on. And after my automation was created, I was able to test it. And this is the result. I can turn off my office lights. Using the left switch, I can turn on the side lights. Using the right switch, I can turn on my down lights. And I can use the power on button to turn on all of the lights. And it's as easy as that. So lessons that I learned while working on creating my own bridge. There was quite a few lessons that I learned. One was Phillips Hue bridge lamps. So if you've got a Phillips Hue bridge and you linked lamps onto it, and you want to link these lamps now onto your own Zigbee device, please do delete them from the Phillips Hue app. I made the mistake of just deleting the entire bridge from my app, and I was struggling to pick up the lamps. And after a lot of research, I realized that I had to actually delete the lamps. So I had to take my bridge, plug it in again, install the Philips Hue app again, and I had to set up everything again so that I could delete it. Because I deleted the bridge, the Philips Hue lamps didn't just show up in Philips Hue, so I had to switch them on and off 5 times, and then they started showing up in Philips Hue. And once they were deleted there, my Zigbee bridge immediately started picking them up. Next is multiple Zigbee coordinators. So the Zigbee to MQTT needs full control of the Conbee device. So don't install other software that will also try to control the Conbee device. So don't install the official software. The mistake that I made was in Home Assistant, you can configure the Conbee device. I configured it, and all of a sudden my system didn't work anymore. And I couldn't find out, and it took me quite a few hours to realize what I had done. And I restarted my Raspberry Pi and the Docker containers, and I made sure that Zigbee to MQTT was started up first so that it could take control again. Next was sleeping devices. So end devices that run on batteries do go to sleep. When you want to bind devices that go to sleep, or if you want to add them to a group, you could get an error message that pops up. You might not know what it means, but this is usually when an end device has gone to sleep. So when you want to bind an end device that runs on a battery, or you want to add it to a group, just press the button on it just to activate it, and then the binding or the group will be created. Next was disable join when not in use. Now this for me was actually a funny story. I thought I can just use the join on. I can just leave the join on. I didn't have to turn it off. But one day when I went to my Zigbee controller and I looked at all of the devices linked to my Zigbee to MQTT, I found a device that I'd never linked before. And after a while, I realized it was my neighbor that had plugged in, that had gotten Phillips Hue light bulbs, plugged one in, and he couldn't use it. My Zigbee controller connected it for it. And I don't know what happened, but I saw it was plugged in for about 2 hours and then was plugged out. So I decided I will be kind to my neighbors and leave this option off. And lastly is think about security. If you're going to expose your Home Assistant to outside of your own network, then do think about security. Don't just open up a port on your router routing to the Home Assistant, as you can then have hackers hack your Home Assistant. So there's a lot of information on the internet. If you do decide you want to hook it up to Google Home, for example, please do read up and do secure your home system. You don't want hackers attacking you. One big security risk is also yourself. Always be aware of what you're doing. Remember that you can now control your device. So if you can control it outside, just remember that you can actually turn on stuff. I've got a little video explaining on how you could actually be the vulnerability in your own security.
Curtains, lights, doors. It even unlocks my car. And the only one with access is me.
I want to thank you all for joining my presentation this morning. Please do rate me in the JFall app. And I've got on the left, I've got a link, a QR code to the link to my GitHub page. And on the right, I've got a link to where I've uploaded this slideshow online. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your JFall